Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. Happy Monday to you guys out there. I am Billy Embody. It's November 24th, 2025, and a huge show. Probably the show I might be most excited about, just as far as we have action on the coaching carousel front. That is shocking and interesting to talk about, which we'll break down for you guys as far as the ACC world of things. And of course, we have week 13 that kind of played out very similar to how we thought it would, in a sense. And that gave ACC fans a little bit of clarity for that ACC championship race. Now, getting down to this week 14 slate, which we'll talk about, of course, later in the week on All Access AM. But the picture is very clear now as far as what is potentially going to happen. And if the things that are now on the table to happen don't happen, then everybody can get thrust back into chaos, talking about all of the different scenarios that can happen in the ACC. So lots to play for two teams in particular this coming weekend. That's a conversation for another day. We'll break down week 13 on this edition of the show, presented by our friends at Security National Bank. Security National Bank is a family-owned bank that you guys should feel comfortable with, talking about your financial goals, talking about your business, and helping you reach your financial goals along the way while you reach your personal goals and your family goals and all those things. That's the type of people Security National Bank are all about partnering with, and they want to help you build your family wealth and your legacy with them by your side all the way through. Like I said, family-owned bank, so a great time of year to remind you guys about them with Thanksgiving approaching. It is Thanksgiving week. I can't believe it, the final week of the regular season. Guess what? You do have a couple days here before all the in-laws and all the family come to town. So maybe give them a call today, or go to securitynational.bank for more information on how they can take a look at your entire financial picture and assess it for you and help you get to your next round of goals with our friends at Security National Bank. So appreciate their support and sponsorship of All Access AM. Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central, 8 to 9 Eastern. We are live discussing ACC football, basketball, and more. Please, if you haven't done so already, it takes absolutely nothing. Hit the subscribe button right down here. It's probably right here. If you're on your YouTube channel and you see it and it says subscribe, that means you are not subscribed. So hit that button. It does nothing. It just helps the channel grow. We really appreciate all of you guys who join us here, whether you're having your coffee, whether you're already on the job site, however you are spending your mornings. We are glad you are here with us at All Access AM. It is wild to think about where the ACC championship race has gone from the beginning of October to the end of November. And it continues to be a league that is, talked about in a way that is chaotic and is kind of wild in a sense. But I think it's because you see some of the teams that get the hype, get some of the preseason buzz, and maybe that things don't go their way, or things don't go the way you expect some of them to go, and all of a sudden it means it's a bad mark on the league. And you look at the SEC and Texas A&M, Oklahoma, two teams that have been a huge part of transforming the college football landscape through realignment. Again, Aggies now well into their SEC tenure, but two teams that nonetheless aren't the traditional pieces of the puzzle for that SEC. They're right up there in the college football playoff rankings alongside some of their brands. Now, the SEC, we know about all the conversation around them. With the ACC, you're seeing a league that is, because of college football's changes, able to see some of their teams become more capable of playing good football, as well as their addition, like SMU, being in this race with all the money and resources and coaching prowess and player talent that they've contributed to this puzzle, have all been able to piece together to make it a more competitive league. That's why Clemson's down, because they haven't adjusted to this new world of college football. That's why Florida State has been struggling as of late, trying to piece together the puzzle of what this new world looks like and how Mike Norvell can get back to where they were a couple years ago. All of those things are really difficult to kind of navigate. And North Carolina is going through a change. They're installing a new program there with Bill Belichick that, gosh, was just so close to doing what I kind of thought that they, one, could do, but also getting to a point in that game against Duke where, man, that would have kicked the door down as far as UNC being a team that you could look at down the stretch of this season in ACC play and say, wow, they've won 3 of their last 4 entering the final regular season week. Instead, they've lost their last 2 after a 2-game win streak. They now face NC State on the road. We'll talk about that. We'll break down all the Week 13 reaction. But I thought for North Carolina, that was kind of, they were so close to getting kind of that, I thought, final piece to, the waters being settled and say, okay, look at what Bill Belichick's doing there over the course of the season, building the program and getting guys to buy in. But you look at this league, and it is so competitive, and it is a league that doesn't get credit for a team like Pitt being in the position that they are after making a quarterback change. Very similar to SMU last year, outside of having that Notre Dame non-conference game in the middle of Pitt's slate. If that wasn't popped in there, Pitt would be talked about a lot differently in a sense. But you look at what SMU, what Pitt have been able to do this year, kind of seeing their coaching staffs make changes and make adjustments to put them into the positions now that they're in. It's really impressive. And Virginia did it in the offseason and has been able to navigate this schedule to put them in position to go to the ACC championship game with a win against Virginia Tech this weekend. So that was kind of a scatter shooting of thoughts there to kick off the show a little bit as Week 13 wound down or is now done. We're certainly into game week, so to speak, of Week 14 for college football. But this is a Monday reaction show. So we've got a couple things to get to here and a couple of things that I haven't even mentioned. Mike Norvell retained by Florida State, according to multiple reports across the board Sunday evening. We'll have Matt Lasser of War Chant of On3 join us at 7:30 a.m. Central Time, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. He'll break down what it means for Mike Norvell, what's next for that program as they look to, again, kind of figure it out with Mike Norvell at the helm. It would have been a $100 million type of decision for FSU. They end up kicking the can down the road to next year. We'll see what that means for the Noles, and we'll hear from Matt on the show. Justin Wilcox fired at Cal after Stanford beat the brakes off of them Saturday night. Got the axe back. I know it kind of went viral for some ACC fans because they haven't seen the exchange before. This is the first year that obviously Stanford was able to take it back, I believe, in 4 years. So credit to them for coming up and stepping up in a big way. It was a really cool night on the farm watching that happen, but means that Justin Wilcox has lost his job, and SMU heads over to Cal this weekend facing an interim coach who is trying to pick up the pieces from a team that just lost in impressive fashion to their rival and now doesn't have their coach. Nick Rolovich, the former Washington State coach, is the interim coach. I'm going to react to that probably at the end of the show because a couple things. One, if at the end of the show I go on and on, I got the end to kind of keep rolling past into the 8 o'clock hour Central Time, but maybe that means a couple Cal fans will be up on the West Coast to hear it as well. And Matt Lasser will kick off our kind of coaching carousel reaction at 7:30 a.m. Central Time. So we got about 20-ish minutes to get through, in a sense, Week 13. Some of these games, now that we're in this point of the year, not going to spend too much time on, just from a standpoint of some of them have nothing to do with the conference championship race. But I always want this show to, as best we can, mention every ACC football team when we break down in-season stuff. As we get out of season, I'm going to try to do some different things that kind of look at the teams or maybe talk about the ACC as a whole, and we'll get into that. And as we get into basketball season, obviously basketball will take a bigger role in this show as well. But I always want to give a thought or two on just about every team in season. So If you like what you're hearing so far on the show, we're now well over a month into the show. It's really, really cool for me to see it kind of grow and watching, the numbers pop up and see as people are watching more and more, whether you're on Twitter watching us, whether you're on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys. And it really helps us if you hit the subscribe button to our All Access AM YouTube channel. Again, we're kind of simulcasting on the SMU channel that I have, but All Access AM is where you can find us on YouTube. It'll pop right up if you Google All Access AM YouTube. Hit the subscribe button for me. Week 13, ACC football. We get into our breakdown now. Friday night, FSU goes on the road at NC State, and everybody talked about NC State at home at night on a Friday night. Well, that's exactly what happened to FSU. They got NC Stated in a sense. 21-11, NC State wins this one to get to 6-5. Dave Dorian really seeming like he's going to probably be retained now that they've hit bowl eligibility. They do finish up with North Carolina, which, as Cal found out, maybe an inflection point. If they lose that one, maybe somebody says, you know what, we can't be losing to Carolina like that, a first-year coaching staff, Bill Belichick or not. Maybe things change in that regard. But NC State able to get the win over FSU, 21-11. This was a defensive struggle in the first half, 7-3, and then North Carolina State pulled away in this one. And FSU and their ability to outgain opponents but still lose is so impressive. Here's the turnover margin in this Friday night matchup. 4-0. And it goes just exactly how you'd expect a team that outgained the other team to go. FSU loses the turnover battle 4-0. They had some of the most incredible punt mishaps to really cost them the game. And it was just unbelievable to see the ending of that game and how NC State was able to capitalize on those huge just mishaps by FSU. And it really was shocking to see it play out the way it did in Raleigh that night. Deuce Robinson, though, for FSU continues to be a box score legend. Had another 74 yards on 4 receptions. Tommy Castellanos had nearly 300 yards as a whole, but 2 interceptions from him, including the game-clinching one by NC State. Really late in that one was able to put that one out of reach. CJ Bailey, I think when you look at next year in the ACC, is going to be one of the top quarterbacks, returning 152 yards through the air, really efficient, 18 of 25, 2 touchdowns. Hollywood Smothers, 21 carries, 84 yards. I just think for NC State, again, I've said this a lot on the show, this roster is playing out where if Dave Dorian can figure something out, they can be super competitive in the ACC next year. So I'm really intrigued to see how they make things happen in the offseason to kind of shift things around. If there is more of a, okay, we're going to dump more resources into this or resources into that to make things work a little bit better. But it's certainly one where you've got to find a way to get more out of this team because, one, you're already kind of losing a lot of people in a sense. If you're Dave Dorian, I'm sure there's a lot of NC State fans that just are like, you know what, give all the money to basketball, give it all to Will Wade, let him make some moves on the recruiting trail and let it happen, but until they make a change at the football coach position. But he was able to really have some big wins down the stretch here, and I think also kind of give that program maybe a little bit of boost going into the offseason. So that was a big result Friday night. I kind of thought it was so unbelievable the way FSU lost that Mike Norvell might still find a way to be safe. And sure enough, he is safe. Again, multiple reports coming out Sunday night that he is going to be retained for the 2026 season. And we'll have Matt Lacera on in about 15 minutes to talk about that. But it's just been kind of a comedy of errors that are almost statistically unbelievable for FSU over the course of this season. I believe I saw the stat on Twitter, and it was maybe, I forget who said it, but I believe they've outgained their opponents in every game but one, and they've lost. and the rest of the teams that are in that group are all in the top 10 of the college football playoff. So really kind of unbelievable the way FSU currently sits in the position that it's in. And they will face off against Florida this weekend with a chance to get to bowl eligibility. They're 5-6 overall. So really difficult loss there for FSU. Again, kind of had a chance to similar to North Carolina in a sense, had a chance to be in a position where you've won 3 of your last 4. Instead, you're kind of splitting here down the stretch, and you've got to win to make a bowl with your rivalry game this weekend against Florida. So tough one Friday night. No implications there on the ACC championship race, really outside of tiebreakers if everybody loses this weekend in a sense. So nothing too much there, but it was a game that, again, I think continued to show where NC State is as a program from a roster perspective. And if they can play at their best and play smart football, they can win some football games. FSU is the opposite of that in a sense where they continue to give games away, and it's showing up in the win-loss column. So that was your Friday night ACC matchup. When you get to Saturday, Notre Dame, Syracuse. This was ugly. 70-7. I don't even want to spend much time on it at all. It's a non-conference game. Notre Dame going for style points here. Notre Dame was up 35-0. They were after the first quarter, they were up 21-0 before Syracuse's offense even touched the field. Insane. 2 interception returns for touchdowns among those plays for Notre Dame. Just absolutely insane. And the punt return, they were up 21-0 before Notre Dame's offense had even stepped on the field. So the punt return as well, giving Notre Dame a 21-0 lead. Again, just kind of insane. Jeremiah Love continues to be, one of, if not the Heisman front runners. 8 carries, 171 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. Jadarian Price, 4 carries, 70 yards. Notre Dame averaged 13.7 yards per carry. I really feel for Fran Brown and his team. 3-8 overall, 1-4. Their one win in conference going back, they're 3-8 overall. And I always get so confused when they do this on ESPN, but you have the overall schedule, and when you play Notre Dame, it shows either away or home record instead of your conference record. But 3-8 overall. Of course, their win kind of breaking Clemson in a sense earlier this year, and Steve Angeli goes down, and the rest is history. Joseph Filardi, 14 of 26, 3 interceptions, 83 yards. Luke Carney got some time as well, but too much Irish. I mean, you don't even learn anything from this game. So let's move on. Let's not talk about that. Virginia Tech, Miami. I really thought Virginia Tech was going to make this a little bit more of a game, and I know it eventually Virginia Tech kind of chipped away. Miami did that thing where it kind of, I don't want to say turtles, but Miami built a 20-3 lead at the half, and you're kind of like, all right, they're going to cruise, and they did cruise. Virginia Tech was not able to make it more like competitive in a sense than it was, and it was still a good game in the second half where the team split. That was, I think, encouraging for Virginia Tech. Maybe gives them a little bit of confidence going into this rivalry game against Virginia. And you have a Miami team that took care of business on the road, 34-17 against maybe an inspired Virginia Tech team. But Miami now goes into this game against Pitt this weekend on the road with kind of everything to play for, and an opportunity to make the College Football Playoff Committee consider 2 teams in the ACC getting into this thing. If Miami wins out, they'd get maybe another ranked win over Pitt, although Pitt would be, maybe dropped out of the top 25, which is just so dumb the way they do this. But you have a Miami team that is, playing very, very well against lesser competition, and trying to take advantage of the opportunity they have to show the committee that, hey, our 2 losses are to good rosters in the ACC. We have good wins, and we're taking care of business against some of these lesser opponents. I will say Notre Dame will certainly be touting the head-to-head win over Syracuse 77 versus what Miami did to Q. So it is a kind of just run-of-the-mill game. 320 yards passing for Carson Beck. He was able to make some things happen, had 4 touchdowns. You saw the return of Mark Fletcher, which was important. And Virginia Tech, again, they tried their best to show a little promise there for James Franklin, who was in attendance. He joined the broadcast for a bit, but didn't really learn too much on this game in a sense, because I just thought Virginia Tech maybe could kind of sneak attack Miami in this one and play an inspired brand of football and figure it out. But just too much early mistakes allowed Miami to build a lead that Virginia Tech couldn't recover from, and they lost this one again, 34-17. That was another one of the 11 a.m. games. I believe maybe it was 2:30, but pretty sure it was 11 a.m. SMU against Louisville. Another 11 a.m. game in this one. SMU blows out Louisville at home on Senior Day, 38-6. SMU trying to make a statement here down the stretch of this season. And I got to be honest, they're making that move. They are making that move and getting into position now for the ACC championship. They beat Louisville, and Pitt, Georgia Tech, which we'll talk about in just a minute, plays out the way it does. With a win at Cal this weekend, where SMU takes on Cal at 7 p.m. Central Time, they will punch their ticket for the second straight year to Charlotte to play for the ACC championship. SMU was able to build a 21-6 halftime lead. They had 485 yards of total offense to Louisville's 228 yards. Deuce Adams gets the start for Louisville and finishes 12 of 17. Not bad, but 94 yards. SMU kept everything in front of it. I think Louisville had 2 kind of explosive plays before the end of the half, and they were and that was it. The pass defense for SMU was just outstanding. They were able to do so many things, keep things in front of them for the most part. And Brady Allen finished out the game for Louisville. He went 2 of 3 for 6 yards and an interception. SMU, their defense is stepping up to the table and really doing some nice things. Louisville had 128 of their 228 yards on the ground. SMU didn't necessarily get ran on. Louisville was able to do some good things early, and SMU settled in and eventually, pulled away, shutting out Louisville in the second half, 17-0. 38-6 is your final. SMU 8-3 overall, 6-1 in ACC play. SMU is 6 inches or so from being undefeated in league play for the second straight year. They had that game-winning field goal against Wake Forest in that awful game offensively for them, but really they have played really well in league play once again outside of that game. Kevin Jennings, his 3rd straight 300-yard passing game, and they are peaking at the right time. 9 of 13 on 3rd down, Louisville 3 of 12. Things really went well as a whole for SMU in this one, and they were just able to dominate on Senior Day, a senior class that finished 21-4 at home and just continues to set a new standard for this program and gets them in position again to make it to Charlotte and to the college football playoff. It's unbelievable what SMU is able to do in league play since entering the ACC. I know we have Matt Lasser coming in 5 minutes. I want to touch on Pitt, Georgia Tech, because look, the rest of the games are just, we'll talk about Cal Stanford later on. We'll talk about Duke, North Carolina after we get done with Matt. But Pitt, Georgia Tech, there's almost not much to say about it because of the way it played out. And Georgia Tech made it interesting, but Pitt raced out to that big lead, was able to make it 28-0. Georgia Tech at home, shell-shocked completely. Haynes King just couldn't get anything going. Was really unfortunate for him to see his day play out the way it did, and all the hopes and kind of dreams of New York that he had play out the way it did. I'll say this. I try to watch College Game Day every morning and the ACC huddle. And game day, I believe, comes on like an hour before the huddle. So I always see the intro. I always like the intro, and then game day kind of loses me for a bit. When Pat McAfee showed the shirt of Haynes for Heisman, I said, oh no. I kind of had this feeling that it might be one of those things where I don't want to say it's not who Georgia Tech is, but it's not who Georgia Tech is. Like, they are all about their work in a sense. And I know Brent Key probably had nothing to do with that shirt ending up there, and Haynes had nothing to do with that shirt ending up there. But I just thought, look, I know they're campaigning, but if they beat Georgia next week, that's what's going to win Haynes King the Heisman. If they go into Georgia with their spot in the ACC championship confirmed, then they have an opportunity for Haynes King to win the Heisman by beating Georgia. And I don't want to say that's all it takes, but that's all it takes. And instead, Haynes King just had a night to forget. They did close the gap 28-14, and this game did, again, get interesting down the stretch. Georgia Tech was able to close it to 35-28 as well eventually after Braylon Lovelace's 100-yard interception return for a touchdown in the third quarter was the only score in that quarter. And Jakarian Turner had a huge run to ice it and make it 42-28. Pat Narduzzi, and I was tweeting about this, and some Pitt fans were kind of chirping right back, and I was a little confused about it all. But Pat Narduzzi goes for the punt, the fake punt in the final few minutes, and kind of gives Georgia Tech that opportunity to come back. I mean, that really jump-started them a bit. And it was so interesting to me to see that happen, and for Pitt to eventually answer the bell and shut it down and put this one on ice. And I just felt like this was a game where the Pitt that I've been seeing, at least in ACC play, showed up. Mason Heinschel, can't say enough good things about him and what he's done since taking over as a starter. 20 of 27 for 226 yards, 2 touchdowns. Haynes King finished 27 of 41, 257 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Jakarian Turner had 200 yards on the ground, 21 carries, 201. Had a 200-yard day and a touchdown run. Of course, that really sealed it, put it on ice. Pitt's passing attack and offense as a whole, since Mason Heinschel has entered the starting quarterback job picture there, has just been awesome outside of that game against Notre Dame. And he was able to put it on Georgia Tech and really make things interesting for them. And just his ability to move around and extend plays really helped them do that. And you look at Pitt and the way they're playing since Mason Heinschel took over, that piece of the puzzle has just not gotten enough credit nationally, as far as, hey, they had 2 early losses, they made a change, and now they're, in terms of eye test, right, they're probably one of the top teams in the ACC, playing at a super high level. If they did not get into the ACC championship game, it would be a tough blow for them. Of course, they made their bed earlier in the season, in a sense, with that one loss, but you have a team that is playing at a high level. If I'm SMU, I would not want to play Pitt in the ACC championship game. And, of course, Virginia, if they could take care of business against Virginia Tech this weekend, will be playing in the ACC championship game against really one of SMU or Pitt, I think, or Miami, still having an outside shot. But that is kind of it on some of the big reactions. We'll get to a little bit more here in just a moment, but we do have Matt Lasser of War Chant joining us. But before we get to Matt, we want to remind you guys that we're also presented by our friends at Corporate Magic, corporatemagic.com, one of the best event companies you will find, a full-blown event production company. They do an incredible job at making your dreams come to life. And I think whether it's a national sales meeting or global broadcast, streamed events, or productions seen by millions across the globe, all of those types of brands and people and companies trust them with their expertise. They have decades of experience to every project that combine planning, design, and technology to keep your audience fully engaged. So whether it's dramatic staging, dynamic content, or the precision needed for live television, Corporate Magic delivers with accuracy and care. Big stages demand a partner who knows how to perform when the stakes are high. For more information, visit corporatemagic.com today. So really excited now to be joined by Matt Lasser of warchant.com. Matt, happy Monday to you. I know it's been quite the weekend for you, but you do have some clarity, which in our world is kind of nice to have at times, even if it means maybe a fan base that probably is feeling some type of way this Monday morning.
Yeah, for sure. It's been it was a long Sunday. At least the Cowboys won. That was fun to watch in the midst of it. But it's it was an interesting reaction. Not really an unexpected one. I wouldn't even say the decision was very unexpected. I think over the last few weeks, they've kind of shown us that Norvell was going to stay around. It will be interesting to see what they do with the front office or what they do with the recruiting operation. Because I think, even though really you think about it, that's probably all should have happened last year when they overhauled all the coordinators. But now they're looking at it. Basically, it's all right, if you're going to stay this time, you have to overhaul your front office or your recruiting staff now instead of your offensive and defensive coordinators. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. And also, like back when they hired the two coordinators, we had to look at it as you were probably tying yourself to Norvell for 2 years at the time. I know things kind of went off the rails this year with the loss of Stanford, and that's kind of where everyone looks. But, some of these guys, like I think a guy like Tony White doesn't have the right guys for his system yet, and that's the reason why they struggled, and they have improved throughout the year. But, I'm interested to see what they do in the portal this upcoming offseason, maybe make some run at some recruits here right at the end to kind of get those right guys in.
And I think, watching Friday night play out, seeing FSU outgain another opponent and find a way to lose. It's not that, like, you can make the argument that, okay, well, the head coach ultimately is responsible for all the things that happen, including win-loss. And I think Mike is having just a really tough time with some of the bounces that are going their way. And I know that's not a quantifiable stat and you ultimately control them, but man, we'll never see the punt, return.
I was about to say, that's a fluke, man. Bouncing off someone's helmet, like whatever. Like, what are you gonna do? I don't know if did you hear about the team's travel issues coming back too? Yes, it was a nightmare day. Yeah, so they got they were flying into Tallahassee. First off, the flight got delayed because they weren't sure if they could get into Tallahassee, and then they took off thinking they were gonna make it back until right before they were about to land, like 15, 20 minutes before they were about to land, and had to make a 90-degree turn, divert to Jacksonville, where they sat on the tarmac at 3 a.m. for hours until they could get buses there to take them to Tallahassee. So they didn't get back to Tallahassee until around 11:15 Saturday morning. So it was an all-time bad day for Mike Norvell. It was like what could go wrong, did go wrong, and it was, a lot of people on Twitter, the fan base, thought like, man, that would have been a fitting ending the way everything worked out. Ball off the helmet, another muff punt, and then your travel doesn't work out. I honestly think the travel not working out probably helped them a little bit because everyone was waiting for that decision on Saturday, and it was like, well, they're not going to make a decision when the team's not even back in town, right? Like, it's kind of hard to do.
Yeah, just an incredible Saturday. Well, Friday into Saturday. And it's just kind of been a season where you're seeing flashes. You saw it in week 1. You see it where, they can kind of piece things together and win certain games this year. But as a whole, they haven't obviously kicked the door down. They have a chance to do that this weekend against a Florida team that, is with an interim coach, but is playing hard still. They got just blown out by Tennessee this past weekend. Maybe that's a good sign if FSU can capitalize on maybe how that Florida team is feeling. Some of the guys probably already looking into the portal and things like that. But, for FSU to get this clarity going into the final week of the regular season against Florida, that could help, that could hurt. Why do you think this weekend was that time? Do you think it was, something where they didn't want to have the win in your back or losing your, gone kind of mentality going into this final week, this rivalry game?
I just think it was the way the narrative was going on around the program where they were kind of forced to make a statement. I feel like they would have liked to wait, but the way it kind of worked out was everyone was like, all right, man, we need to hear something. Everyone was like, we need a statement because this is ridiculous. And so I think it kind of forced their hand. I think it was their choice. They probably wouldn't have liked to have made a statement. But I also think this was personally, and there's no factual evidence to this, but I personally think it was done well before this, that he was coming back. And, it's just kind of that buyout. And at the end of the day, the buyout's too much. That's probably the main thing saving him. But yeah, I just think they were forced to make a statement by the way the fan base was reacting. And also, with the way signing day is set up now, you can't really, it's hard to fire a coach at the end of the season and try to salvage a recruiting class. And then you got to go into the portal right after. So I think all that timing has a lot to do with it as well. I will say Justin Wilcox getting fired and they're bowl eligible, that doesn't go well with the fan base at the same time. But it's I think it was a done deal before this, and the fan base getting all up in arms. Just they needed to see something that showed what was going on next year.
What does Mike Norvell and this staff have to do to fix this program and get it back to, obviously where they want it? I would say bowl eligibility, but they have a shot this weekend to get there.
Yeah.
But even if they lose this weekend, back to where this program really sees itself and wants to get to, and with all the new facilities and investments, where they should be too for this league.
Yeah, Norvell, this staff has had all the resources you can imagine. They probably have a top 15 NIL roster in the country. They just opened that brand new football only facility. In general, I do think they're close. I do think for this last recruiting class, they hit on a lot of guys. You see a lot of young contributors like a Shamar Arnaud or an Usman Kroma, Javon Boggs, who's gotten banged up this year, but is one they're excited about. They've stacked some offensive line depth that people need to see next year to believe. But there's a lot of the pieces are there. Kevin Sperry, a young quarterback from Denton, Texas, that people are very excited about the start in the future here. And I think the real answer is that they're close and they need to keep hitting on these high school recruiting classes and stay out of the portal as much. It needs to be more, get all your guys out of high school and then fill your gaps in fill your gaps in the portal that you've seen work for so many other programs now as a long-term option. I mean, that's really it. They've relied too much on the portal, and I think they're admitting that by making these, or what they will make front office changes. They will make changes to the recruiting operation. But yeah, I think it's just need to continue developing these young guys. First off, retain them that are already here, because they've had they've hit on a lot of guys recently, and it's just young kids making mistakes. The Desir twins, Mandrell Desir might be a freshman All-American here soon because the way he's played. He's the team's sack leader, or at least he was going into the NC State game. I haven't checked to see if that changed. I don't think it did. But, I mean, it's just continue to develop these young pieces and continue getting those building blocks.
Do you see the operation changing so much where maybe we see something like the general manager makes personnel decisions with maybe Mike Norvell in consultation, or do you think Mike's going to have a little bit more like even footing, or maybe even be slightly above a GM? Kind of, how do you think the past couple of years have played out in terms of impacting what is next in those roles?
Yeah, that's my question too. Now, you would think, I don't know if Derek Ray's going to stick around or not. I don't really they haven't announced any of the decisions. But I think in general, that's a question I'd be interested to ask the AD, Michael Alford, is, are you looking at an Oklahoma model where they have Nagy's kind of on the same level as Venables, right? Like they're not, if Venables gets fired, Nagy's probably going to still be there, or at least that's the way it feels like that. Or is it going to be still someone like they have now where you're technically under Mike Norvell as your GM? I could see them do it as an equal kind of footing, but at the same time, if Mike's not calling plays, what is he doing if you do that? Like what is his role in general? Because you've given up everything that mostly that a head coach does, right? You've given up play calling. At that point, you've even given up a lot of recruiting responsibilities. Like, is he just a motivator of men at that point? That's kind of the issue of it's going to be interesting to see how this administration looks at this as a thought, as their thought process going into this to kind of save Mike Norvell and maybe even save their jobs at this point, right? Because now their whole careers are going to be at Florida State are going to be looked at as, well, you guys are the ones that decided to keep Mike Norvell, and the fan base, you're not serious about football anymore and all this kind of stuff. But I think that it's going to be interesting to see where they go in that route. I haven't really gotten any indications of where yet. I personally wouldn't mind the idea of having a GM on equal footing as Norvell that has a lot more say like that. But again, it's just if you're Mike Norvell, what's your job now if you do that?
Florida State closes out the regular season against Florida this weekend. Is there anything early on to know about that matchup? Do you see any injuries that are popping up right now that could impact that, or just kind of an early feel for the in-state rivalry game coming up this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Florida goes out there and looks like 2019 LSU this week. That's kind of just the way it goes. But it's this is probably a game they should win. I think you saw against Tennessee that Florida might be losing a little bit of its motivation there. They have played hard for the most part since Billy got fired, and I also still think the Swamp is a tough place to play. Injuries so far, nothing really unexpected. Javen Boggs might be one to watch. He had a scary issue. I think he collapsed on the field after the game yesterday, but they're saying he's all right, and he was even practicing yesterday. That's the only one to watch right now. Sam Singleton may be making a return. He missed last game. Same with Richie Leonard, an offensive lineman who actually is making his return to the Swamp. He transferred him from UF a couple of years ago. So I think he'll have a little bit of extra motivation to return. In general, this is a big game just to get that bowl eligibility. And like I said before, big part of Norvell's selling point to stay is all these young guys on the team that are looking good and that are already contributors as freshmen, redshirt freshmen. So if you can get a bowl game, and those bowl practices are pretty important for those young guys, right? So you can start developing them even more. It's basically another spring, another fall camp for a game that quote unquote doesn't matter, and it's just an expedition. So you're going to have to see him get up for that. It was interesting for future stuff for Florida State if Gus Malzahn is sticking around. When asked if he was sticking around or staying next year, he said, I'm focused on getting his bowl eligible, winning this game. But that's kind of been Gus's MO all year. It's in general, look, this is one they probably should win, but it's going to be a get-up game for Florida, just like it was for Clemson at Clemson, and you're at the Swamp. So it's still going to be tough, and it's still a rivalry game. Still anything can happen. I think in general they'll come in pretty healthy. The guys they missed last week were already game-time decisions, so should be back this week, I would assume, or at least have a good chance to come back.
You brought up a good point about the bowl practices, and we'll end on this. This roster, their recruiting evaluations, how they built it, all of those things, is it a roster issue just as a whole? And in the second part of kind of what I'm kind of looking at here is the high school recruiting evaluations, because they have, solid classes ranked well. Are they eval issues as well that need to be kind of addressed? Obviously, we spoke earlier about that entire overhaul that is going to come that needs to happen, obviously when things like this happen and the way that the last two seasons have played out. And lastly, the bowl practices, is that an opportunity for some guys that are maybe hanging out, kind of not in the huge roles yet, but maybe can make an impact, that were more highly ranked from those classes recently?
Yeah. I'll start with your last question first. Yeah, for sure. It is a good opportunity for them to make an impact. Even because I'm sure you'll see guys opt out for the draft and stuff. That's just the way it is now. I think it'd be a good opportunity for the young guys, this offensive line on the backups, to show like how much depth this offensive line really has. I've talked to some people who are close to the program and not in the program that actually think this offensive line depth is pretty good. We just haven't gotten the chance to see it. So I think that would go a long way for the bowl practices, make people feel better going to next season. I think it's been a mix of everything when it comes to recruiting. Because it's clear that I think the talent on this roster is there. It's not like this roster isn't talented. According to talent composites, it's normally and always is one of the better ones in the ACC. So that's when it comes down to development and coaching. But at the same time, I think there's been a lot of missed evals. They've had a lot of ones hit more recently. Like the Desir twins has been a huge one that they've hit on, and it's starting to get better. But they just haven't shown much of being able to really hit on a lot of those. And the truth is, They've done a better job of it this recruiting cycle for 2026. That before they weren't really casting a super wide net. They were swinging for the fences at these big guys and then didn't have much backup options. And also, it didn't help that the guys you're swinging for the fences for would commit to you and then just not sign on signing day, like literally wait until the last second. That never helps. But it felt like this year they kind of fast-tracked that to where they had a plan in place for everything to happen to be able to get a kid last second. Even though if that kid was a 3-star, whatever, they had already evaluated this kid and had him on the back burner. We're keeping him warm this whole time. So I think that's kind of something they've improved at, and I'm sure they'll get better at. But yeah, it's been a kind of an issue of everything within that department. I think a little bit of eval, a little bit development. It crosses everything, I think.
Florida State ranked 14th in the Rivals industry ranking for the 2026 recruiting class. Matt Lasser of War Chant will be there for you to cover it all. So make sure you subscribe to War Chant and On 3 and Rivals, our whole crew taking care of it for you guys over there at War Chant on the FSU front. Matt, have a great week. Enjoy the rivalry game, and thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thank you. SMU is Cal this week, right? So now you got an interim coach, so that makes it a little easier.
Yeah, SMU does take on Cal. Justin Wilcox gets fired, and Nick Rolovich taking over. Really interesting game out there. Maybe things get a little weird, but for SMU fans, hopefully not. They're hoping for a lot of drama-free. I saw a good tweet out there that SMU bought their way into Justin Wilcox getting fired so that they could face an interim coach.
Hey, my Pitt SMU championship game pick before on the show is looking pretty good now. So
still alive. Alive. Great call. Well, Matt, looking forward to chatting with you more in the future as we'll break down FSU in the offseason, of course, to pay attention to hoops as well. So thanks a lot, man.
Awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Of course. There he goes. Matt Lasser joining us on All Access AM. Appreciate his time on the show. As always, great friend of the show and a Dallas native. So, of course, showing his little SMU tie there, kind of bringing it back to SMU, which does face Cal this weekend, and now an interim coach. We'll break down Justin Wilcox getting fired here in just a minute. But do want to remind you guys about our friends at Sportsmo. They present the show. And huge opportunity for all of you who want to make an impact at an FSU, want to make an impact at Cal, and want to make an impact as a whole. You can visit with our friends at Sportsmo and go to sportsmo.org to learn more about their app. They are tax-deductible donations directly to your favorite college football or basketball program's NIL fund at their university. And you do it through micro donations, and you can learn more about that in this short video about our friends at Sportsmo.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.
Again, sportsmo.org. So appreciate Matt, of course, for coming on. And look, the last 20 minutes or so, I think we're probably going to end up going 20 minutes on this. Probably our longest show of the All Access AM history so far, and we appreciate you guys for joining us on this Monday, Reaction Monday. It is Monday, Wednesday, Thursday that we go live, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We appreciate all of you guys who have hit the subscribe button. I saw a couple roll in during the show. So you're listening, you're paying attention, you're Googling All Access AM YouTube, you're clicking that link, and then you're hitting the subscribe button to that channel. It takes 2 seconds. So you can do it as you're listening to us on this Monday morning. And we appreciate those of you who just subscribed. I saw a couple. I'll try to get your names for next show. We appreciate you guys who interact with us in the chat as well. But it's been a full Reaction Monday, and we react now to Justin Wilcox getting fired at Cal. Cal fires Justin Wilcox, And this is one that I would say kind of caught me by surprise, but I was talking with somebody and they said, look, it just shows don't lose to your big rival and don't lose in the fashion they did. 31-10, Stanford beats Cal. Cal was not really a team that took care of the football, lost the turnover battle 3-0. Still outgained Stanford 297 yards to 282. So it wasn't like they were lighting the world on fire, but they're completely one-dimensional. They threw the ball 269 yards through the air by Sagapatelli, 33 of 49, but they ran the ball for 12 total yards, a half yard a rush for Cal. Stanford, meanwhile, ran for 159 yards on the ground. They were able to get efficient quarterback play from Elijah Brown, 10 of 20, 123 yards, a touchdown. Did you guys see the interview with Andrew Luck on the sidelines in that scoop and score moment? That is a guy that cares and cares deeply about putting Stanford back to where they want to be and where they were when Andrew Luck was playing there. And I think, and I've spoken with Andrew a couple of times, and this GM role that college football teams have, and I want to talk about Stanford here for just a second, but this GM role that Stanford has, and like Oklahoma has, you heard Matt mention that, and like Cal has with Ron Rivera and some of these other programs, and the way some of these guys are a little bit more public and a little bit more out there as far as being involved and not just being, the head of a recruiting or scouting department and they answer to the head coach. You really have to know your program and you have to know who can be in that role and do it successfully, or else you're going to find yourself getting somebody who is not the right fit in a way, right? Like you are going to find yourself having someone who is just maybe looking for the next job or doing this or doing that. And it is a long-term decision that you have to commit to. You can't just, in a way, churn and burn. Like GMs are like athletic directors now. They should get 2 coaching hires to get it right. College football coaches, they're out, they're gone if things don't work out. And Andrew Luck is getting close to making his hire, but he at the top of this program, and credit to Frank Reich, getting them to 4-7 on the year. They'll have a chance to, finish things out with a upset of this year if they were to beat Notre Dame this weekend. But you can tell that they care, and it trickles down to the players, and they have that level of commitment of playing hard. If you've watched Stanford football, some of you sickos out there that have watched a ton of Stanford football out there this season, you could see that they play really hard. You saw the Miami game, how hard they played. They were able to keep it close for a minute, and then Miami turned it on. But that's the type of program that they're working on. And that's why they're dangerous moving forward once they get their head coach situation figured out and they really start to see things go the direction that Andrew Luck envisions for this program. So credit to Stanford for doing what they did, but it cost Justin Wilcox his job. Cal fires Justin Wilcox now and named Nick Rolovich the interim coach. Wilcox compiled a 48-55 overall record. He was just 26-47 in ACC play and Pac-12 play. Of course, Cal coming in with SMU and Stanford to the ACC a couple years ago now. And they were off to a 4-1 start, and people were talking about, Sagapatelli this, Sagapatelli that. But they eventually hit conference play and really, kind of not fell apart, but fell apart. Now sitting at 5-6 on the season. And he was in his 9th season with the program. It was just time. I thought Sagapatelli, if they could get to bowl eligibility, you could see some of the glimpses of what made him, as highly touted as he was, as they were able to bring him in. But it just wasn't enough to obviously get things moving in the right direction as a whole and capitalize on that at the 4-1 spot. Now, the biggest thing for Cal is going to be retaining Jaron Kwu Sagapatelli. And I always butcher that middle part of his name, but Ron Rivera quoted about the start of October about his NIL package. At the appropriate moment, we'll get it ready to go. I'm confident. I really am. Talking about retaining Sagapatelli. And that is a key piece. that is a quarterback you can build around. A new coach can trust him to move the football, to have the offense moving. They need to get him help. Losing Jaden Ott in the offseason was a difficult blow. It really forced Sagapitelli to be the hero and throw it 49 times, I think, like he did against Stanford, and do all those things that you don't necessarily want to do as a true freshman quarterback, but he does have the ability to really impress and kind of make things happen. And we'll see. We'll see how it goes retaining him. They've got a tall order, I'm sure, to retain him, but we'll talk about candidates in just a second. But Cal is showing that they're committed to being on the right side of this by making this move from Justin Wilcox. He's just not a guy that had inspired the program to be eyeing that next level, to taking it up a notch. More questions were kind of surrounding him entering this year. That's why the 4-1 start was so interesting, and how it was able to take off. It is a really interesting thing to see it fall apart the way it did, and it cost him his job. And now you're going to have Nick Rolovich, the former Washington State coach, take over, and he was the head coach of Washington State from 2016 to 2021, or he was at Hawaii before that. And he ends up going to Washington State, gets fired during the pandemic for not taking the COVID vaccine. And obviously now in Berkeley, what a fit that is. But 28-27 with Hawaii, and then 5-6 with his time with the Cougars during that season. He's not a bad coach. I mean, he'll have them probably ready to play, I think, this weekend on senior day at Cal. But this is a Cal team that is kind of spiraled. And now that Justin Wilcox is gone, the question will be, how many guys do you see any guys just portal and be like, you know what, I'm good. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to let it impact what my next stop is. I'm not going to let it impact, the things that maybe are now on the table that I can leave, that my portal window is open. And now you make the decision as Cal that you're going to have this week of a ton of questions. And maybe these guys stick around. Maybe Nick Rolovich, they like him. Maybe they play for him, they play hard, and maybe they could pull an upset over SMU this weekend. But this is still a Cal team that has been pesky, I think, during the season, but they really fell off there with that loss to Stanford, and I think that was the final straw. Of course, this is just a team that a week ago, prior to this, went on the road and beat Louisville in overtime and broke Louisville in a sense. And Louisville came out against SMU and played the way that they did. But just a really difficult run over the last 6 games for Cal. They are 2 of their last 6 now. So really tough way for Cal to go out this season. But I think it's the right move to move on from Justin Wilcox and get a fresh start. 9 years is a long time. It was clear that they weren't going to take it up to the next level. And, Jake Dickert doing what he did in year one, you can show the turnaround in 1 year. You can show the Tony Elliott moves in the offseason where Cal's roster is not in a bad spot. You can make a change and get it to another level. I saw there was a video, Sagapitelli was kind of yelling at some people coming off the field, and maybe some people were yelling at him. I don't know what happened. I didn't see a quote about it, kind of what went down there, but it was kind of ugly at the end of that Stanford Cal game. So they make the move to move on. What's next for Cal? Well, Tosh Lupoi, who, if you are a recruit, Nick, and you follow this on a national level, Tosh Lupoi, the Oregon defensive coordinator, could very well be the next Cal head coach. So former Cal defensive lineman who has always been one of the best recruiters in the country and ended up going to Washington for a while and then going to Alabama to coach for Nick Saban, and then went to the NFL. Kind of, there's always some talks around that decision to head to the NFL, and then gets back into college and has been with Dan Lanning, helping them build that program and establish one of the best defenses in the country alongside Dan Lanning. This is a guy that would absolutely bleed out blue and yellow for Cal over there in Berkeley, and really work alongside Ron Rivera, I think, very, very well. And so Tosh, I think this is his time. This is his opportunity. But there are going to be other guys mentioned in this job, and a lot of them would make a ton of sense to me as well. So check out On3. Pete Nakos was able to break some of those names out there and kind of mention the early candidates around this job and where it's kind of going. I would think Tosh would be the favorite, and I would think Tosh would get it if he wants it. So that is the early buzz around Cal and what's next after they fire Justin Wilcox. So SMU takes on Cal, 7 p.m. Central out there on the West Coast for senior day for the Cal Bears. And we'll see if the Bears can either work some magic or if the Mustangs are headed back to Charlotte with a win. So closing thoughts on the show. And again, appreciate you guys so much for sticking with us on this show. We've got a ton of viewers right now kicking off your Monday morning. Again, go to All Access AM on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Again, the All Access AM channel. Click the subscribe button for us. It helps us out a ton, and we appreciate our sponsors, Security National Bank. You've got Corporate Magic and Sportsmo presenting our Monday show. So really appreciative of all the support we've gotten. We got our Wednesday show, 7 to 8 a.m. Central, and Thursday we are going to drop a pre-recorded show most likely. We are going to drop a show, period. It is going to come out 7 to 8 a.m. Central. It might be pre-recorded, but it also might be live. We'll see kind of how the week goes in getting that Thursday show to kick off your Thanksgiving. Don't want to be spending much time at all doing that on Thanksgiving with the fam. So, and we do have Friday starting off for the ACC as well for week 14 this week with the Georgia Tech game Friday at 2:30 p.m. Central on ABC. I'm really excited to watch that game. Let's close out here. Week 13 results here to kind of know, again, we like to talk about every single team in the ACC when we can, when breaking down what happened over the weekend. Couple of quick hits here. Wake Forest beats up on Delaware 52-14. Wake Forest puts itself in position now to go 9-3 with a win on Saturday in their regular season finale against Duke. Jake Dickert, certainly in the mix for Coach of the Year honors. And he's my pick to get it, like, especially if they beat Duke. But just what you're able to do with the resources and everything at Wake Forest to turn it around the way they have, just impressive. You got to give them credit for doing it. So 52-14 over Delaware gets them to 8-3. If they win out, they can be a 10-win team. Would be really, really impressive from Jake Dickert. So shout out to them. Robbie Ash for 292 yards to the air, and they were just able to dominate, as you'd expect, against a Delaware team who, with a win this weekend for Delaware against UTEP, would be bowl eligible. So not a powerhouse, but also kind of a team that, you know, has some things to play for in the regular final game of the regular season. Clemson takes care of Furman 45-10, really kind of smooth. I think I saw the score of this. It was 31-3 at half, and Clemson just jumped all over him and then kind of cruised, scored 14 points in the final quarter. Cade Klubnik finishes out his final game in Death Valley, 159 yards, 9 of 15, 2 touchdowns. And also Christopher Vizina got some action. Chris Denson got some action. Trent Pierman got some action. You had a bunch of guys play for Clemson. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 different players caught passes for Clemson. And Furman sitting at 6-6 overall in the year, loses 45-10 to Clemson. Clemson now bowl eligible, 6-5 on the year. They did it, waved the flag, mission accomplished. They go play at South Carolina this weekend. This is a big game. Like, Clemson could really help the ACC by beating a bad South Carolina team. Would really, really help. And we'll break all of that down on the Wednesday and Thursday shows, talking about the ACC, how it can really help itself in a perception battle this weekend with some of the games that are going on. Finally, I feel like this show has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed it. I also feel like I mentioned this at the beginning, but don't consider it a breakdown. Duke beats North Carolina 32-25. What a wild game, including the fake field goal to set up, you know, kind of the icing on the cake for Duke in this 32-25 win over the Tar Heels. You know, really, really nice finish to the game for Duke to be able to to pull off what they did because North Carolina took a 25-24 lead. And what does Duke do? Anderson Castle answers the bell and puts them up 32-25 on the 1-yard touchdown run. They get the 2-point conversion to make it a 7-point game. Really, really close ball game. Duke was able to overcome falling behind early. They ripped off 17 unanswered points. And you're kind of thinking, okay, all right, here we go. Wheels falling off a little bit for North Carolina in this game. But instead, they made it an absolute battle, absolute war. They raced back from a 24-10 deficit to take the 25-24 lead. They, were able to, really kind of force Duke's hand to make some plays down the stretch to make it happen. That 9-play, 91-yard touchdown drive for North Carolina was really, really impressive. And look, North Carolina is going to miss a bowl. That's now confirmed. 4-7, 2-5 in the ACC. Duke gets to bowl eligibility. 6-5, 5-2 in the ACC. Keeps their slim, but there, and they might be knocked out. I don't remember the math, but very, very slim ACC championship hopes alive if they're not already knocked out officially. And I did not check about Duke because I just don't see them getting in. But 6-5 bowl eligibility for Manny Diaz. They do face Wake Forest this weekend. They could finish on a high note because this Duke team, just didn't capitalize on some opportunities that they had to really have a great season. Obviously, we've talked ad nauseum about their non-conference performance for the league. Thanks a lot, Duke. And then, losing that game to Virginia at home was difficult to watch as well. But they could rip off 2 games to win and finish out 7-5 on the year. North Carolina has a chance to take on NC State and obviously, turn the heat back up on Dave Dorian. But NC State is bowl eligible. North Carolina playing the role of spoiler, hoping to get to 5-7 in Bill Belichick's first season. So still a lot to be worked through, I think, on North Carolina. And Duke is at a position where 352 yards of total offense and a really balanced performance from that offense. And they dominated time of possession and they did all of those things. Duke just feels like they underachieved so much this year because of their non-conference performance. Even if they went 2-1 instead of going, or 2-1 against power conference opponents instead of going 0-3, like you're looking at Duke in a totally different way as far as talking about their performance in the league and what they brought to the table and things like that, because you're sitting here talking about an 8-3 team going into the final week of the regular season instead of talking about a just complete middle of the road 6-5 team who could finish 7-5. But Duke does have some things to clean up, but they really have a bright future, it looks like, in Durham if they can figure out some just consistency things, man. North Carolina, they're starting to kind of figure things out. It would not shock me at all if they beat NC State this coming weekend. It is at NC State. Maybe they find a way to play spoiler. That would mean that they'd won 3 of their last 5, if not lose 3 of their last 5. So kind of not an inflection point, because I think they've gotten past those early season dramatics and troubles and things to now put them in position to kind of go out in the offseason and recruit and do all the things that they want to do because they've gone through this season for the first time. Now is Bill Belichick's first season coming to a close as a college coach, completed, and that takes a minute to go through and learn and see some of the things that they saw. But it seems like there is a little bit of bright spots to kind of pick up there in Chapel Hill for Chapel Bill and Jordan Hudson, and kind of go into the offseason now and say, okay, we've seen what we've seen. We've obviously gotten kicked in the teeth a couple times here, but we made adjustments. We played well defensively for the most part. Duke had the most success since Clemson did earlier this season in conference play against them from an offensive standpoint. Let's do this and this and this, and we'll figure it out and kind of click some of these right boxes. We'll find out how well they can evaluate. They are in I think they're number 4, number 3 in the ACC recruiting rankings. So they're bringing some talent together. We'll see how it goes. Finally, that is the end of our reactions on this Monday show as far as the games go. But let's check in with the AP poll really quickly for you guys watching, wherever you're watching. AP Top 25 came out. not really that bad, not really unchanged. Miami sits at number 13. You have Virginia at 17. You have Georgia Tech at 23, Pitt at 24, which, God, the AP poll needs like an override button. Like, Georgia Tech just lost to Pitt, and because Pitt has 2 losses early in the regular season, that's why Pitt is still behind Georgia Tech. And those losses came, again, before they made the quarterback change. So they do matter. They are on the resume, all of those things. But goodness gracious, like, Pitt is playing at a far superior level. Let's step up to the table here, AP voters, and figure this out. So SMU at number 25, they are lurking in position to make a move up. The college football playoff rankings come out Tuesday night. We'll react to those and get obviously your Wednesday show out with those reactions. SMU will have a chance here to make a move over the next 2 weeks. They'll go on the road. They'll face a Cal team that is what it is at this point. And then they'll have a chance, if they win that game, to win another ranked game, ranked win over opponent. So we'll see. That's almost why SMU needs Virginia Tech to get a win this weekend, and you need Pitt to get a win. Like, either way, I mean, you're almost you need SMU really needs Virginia to beat Virginia Tech and Miami to beat Pitt, so that then you could have the ranked win. Obviously, you could have Miami sitting up there looking even better and better for this SMU team because they played them. So that's the AP Top 25. That is this show for your Monday. Hope you guys enjoyed waking up with us on All Access AM. We are Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Please chime in the chat. That's another reason why you should subscribe to the YouTube channel. Join us in the chat. Comment. Again, All Access AM YouTube. That's what you need to search in your Google. It'll pull it right up. Hit the subscribe button for me. Do that. Leave us a rating. Leave us a review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We appreciate all of you guys who have done that. Thank you to our sponsors, Security National Bank, Sportsmo, and Corporate Magic for this Monday show. We appreciate them. Thank you guys for listening. Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you guys have a great week planning your Thanksgiving. I'm Billy Embody. This has been All Access AM.